Nothing. Nothing but. Nothing but net. Net.
Welcome to Nothing But Net, the podcast for triple net commercial real estate investing. Before we get into the meat of today's show, let's recap on why there's so much interest and buzz around net properties. Triple net properties are commercial real estate investments where the tenants, usually brand name corporations, pay you rent every month. Can you say mailbox money? In addition, they pay the real estate taxes, insurance, and maintenance for the property. No toilets, termites, or taxes. What's not to like? You can remember what net or triple net stands for by using TIM, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. With triple net properties, there's lower risk income and cash flow because rents are guaranteed by strong credit tenants. Preservation of wealth, because rent increases and property appreciation are bulwarks against inflation and a great store of value. Tax efficiency. The government wants investment in commercial real estate, so they provide inducements through depreciation and deductions which shelter income from taxation. Tax deferral, which gives potential for infinite tax deferral with 1031 exchanges, which are very popular in the triple net space. Triple net properties are a tangible asset, and as Mark Twain once said, buy land. They ain't making any more of it. Hello and welcome back to the Nothing But Net podcast, the podcast for commercial triple net real estate investing. I'm your host, Adam Carswell, joined by our co-host, Michael Flight. And wow, got another amazing episode in the pipeline for you here today. Got David Barry on the line, and we're going to be diving into the legal side of buying triple net properties, as well as the legal side of triple net leases as well. Michael and David have known each other for a while. Probably, I think David and I were joking before the call, for about as long as I've been alive. So you guys are getting a ton of experience and value in today's episode. A little bit more about David. His practice areas are in business and finance, corporate, commercial real estate, commercial leasing, zoning and land use. Graduated from Trinity College, Bachelor of Arts in 1985, University of Connecticut School of Law in 92, and then Boston University School of Law with a master's in taxation in 2006. Probably a lot more to the resume there, and that's where, Michael, I know you're going to come in handy for me. So feel free to help me out here on the intro for David Barry.
Well, I can help you out, and I'd like to tell you how long I've known Dave. I'm going to guess 1994, and maybe you could correct me, but I think it's somewhere around 1994 or 1993. We started working on a shopping center out in Hamden, Connecticut, and he was just a young pup attorney that they kind of stuck with us, you know, because they didn't. But Dave was an amazing guy. Through that, he's been at his own firm, Jacobs, Walker, Rice, and Barry. And you know, when we were looking for somebody to do work, I'm like, I had the best relationship with Dave in terms of somebody that would negotiate the deal, would not over negotiate a deal, knew what all the great points were. And I think he learned from my mentor, who was probably a little bit of his mentor, which is David Bermant. And David Bermant said, I only need you to do these 10 things and don't talk about condemnation or anything else. So Dave and I have known each other for a long time. He's, like I say, done all of our leasing work, all of our transaction work for buying properties. I trust him. He's an expert. But the best advice I ever got from Dave was not legal advice. And I tell this story all the time. Dave knew that my son was a runner, and Dave was a runner at Trinity College. He ran the mile. And Dave said, when Sal was trying to decide what he was going to do in high school, Dave said, there's a lot more scholarships out there for runners than there are soccer players. So tell them to go into running. And it turned out, and then he also pushed my son into going to Providence College. And I didn't even think my son could run it. It was a Division I school. And Dave said, oh, that would be great. I love those guys. And Dave could tell the story. But sure enough, Sal got, accepted. The first college he got accepted into was Providence College. And he actually ended up getting a 4-year scholarship to go there. And so Dave Barry saved me over $240,000.
I love that.
So
he's Dave, I didn't. We didn't get to talk.
He's a full service attorney and consultant.
We were talking athletics before the call as well, and we didn't get to the running part. Dave, I didn't know you were a runner. I'm a former.
that was a long time ago, Adam. I'm in need of a new hip, and will eventually need some new knees. But no, I tell you, as Michael indicated, we've known each other nearly 30 years, and those 8 years when Sal was in high school and college, I mean, I've always enjoyed talking to Michael, but we always ended every call with an update on what Sal's doing, what his times are, how's it going, and those were the best conversations I think we've ever had. And for the the cross section of your listening public here that also is interested in running, I mean, Sal was at Providence College, which is the big time. That's great running tradition there. A lot of great Irish runners have gone through there. So it was a lot of fun, and we got to see him run every year. He would come to the Hartford area where I'm based, and we got to go to a meet up with Michael and his wife. So it was great.
We go out to dinner. So it was a perfect thing. So I think Dave was, pushing him to go to Providence so that, he could see him run. But I do have to say, if anybody out there has kids that have any inkling of, maybe wanting to run long distance running, you can qualify for track and cross country. So you're pretty much doing the season year round. So I would highly encourage it for parents out there looking to get their kids something to do. And it is the cheapest sport my kids ever did. So,
just a pair of shoes, right?
Well, you got to buy. I found out you have to buy more shoes per year, but it's way cheaper than go-karting or soccer or anything like that.
Golf or hockey or anything like that.
Exactly. So anyway, let's talk about real estate. So
yeah, well, I guess if we could just from David's own words as well, kind of hear a little bit about his story, his background, how he got to where he's at, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the fun stuff. Well, that's going to be fun too, but
sure. Well, I've been practicing since 1992. I started out at a medium-sized firm in Hartford, and as Michael said, I've been in my own firm in the suburbs here for the past 25 years now. And I'd say probably 50% of my practice is leasing work, both retail and office side. I think Michael and I have had a lot of transactions over the years. I think on, a net lease transaction, typically Michael would bring me in pretty early in the process, if not at the LOI stage, then at the purchase and sale agreement stage, where I think it's important to have an attorney involved at as early as possible to assist the business people in structuring the deal. I think the Michael and other investors have a tendency in a competitive bidding situation. Let's get this thing under contract. Let's get it to closing, get through our due diligence and get it done. And you need, I think, somebody else there to say, all right, let's get this thing structured. Do we have enough time to do what we want to do? If you're looking to get through your due diligence quickly, is that realistic? Let's take a look at what we've got to do here. Make sure we don't get out over our skis. It's good to be brought in early.
Yeah, no, and let's back up. How did you get into real estate law? Was that something you wanted to do?
Yeah, I did somewhere between my second and third year at the firm that I eventually ended up working at in Hartford, and they kind of rotate you through each of the departments. You then express a preference as to, you know, what you felt best suited your skill set, and probably part of it is who you like to work with, of the senior partners in that department. So I really like the real estate transactional division at the firm I was at, and don't have any regrets.
Cool.
All right, Michael, you wanna break the ice? I know I'm already thinking multifamily versus triple net question for David here. So,
well, why don't you ask him that, and then we'll get the multifamily out of the way.
Well, I'm just thinking, you know, one of the best parts about this show is we found there's really not a lot of other resources out there when it comes to triple net investing. And so I think maybe not a lot, but a good portion of our listeners are people coming from the multifamily space that just don't really know much about triple net, again, the triple net space. So when it comes to the legal side of things, is it very similar to what you would see in different asset classes when it comes to triple net?
Well, I think what you've got to sort of educate the person that's moving over from multifamily to triple net is that with a multifamily, you've got a base lease that whomever has owned the property before has been using. And those are pretty cookie cutter. There are not a lot of traps for the unwary, right? You know, here's the rent. Tenants are responsible for the electricity. There's not much else to it. When you get to a triple net lease, you really need to, if you're not experienced in that area, bring in somebody that is to review that lease. It may be advertised as triple net when there are certain operating costs that are not passed on. You know, maybe it's, you know, over a base year for taxes, so you're going to be taking a hit on that. So, you know, the lease review is much more important on the triple net lease side, particularly if you're coming in from multifamily where it's not a big deal.
So when you're starting out in a transaction, I know you would typically start out on, you know, wanting to review the title and wanting to review, you know, some of the environmental stuff. And then I do want to get back into the lease part. So what other things, you know, should triple net investors be wary of that they should, you know, look at in due diligence that might be a little bit different from, you know, an apartment building?
I think one of the key things that you may find in the triple net world is that if, you know, for instance, if it's, you know, a property that was an outparcel on a shopping center, what do you have out there for cross easements? Is there any chance that your, you know, access could be impeded in the future?
So hold on a second. We need to define what a cross easement is. So
typically, if you're out in front of a shopping center on an out parcel and there's a, you know, inline space behind you, there will be cross easements allowing you to pass and repass over the parking lot that's part of the main shopping center. There's going to be access easements that will allow you to enter on a curb cut that's near you and the other tenants for the shopping center to access over that curb cut too. There may be a common, you know, pylon easement too if your tenant's going to be on the shopping center main pylon. So there are a lot of interplays between the out parcel, single tenant, triple net lease,
or even the ability that if the parking lot is filled, let's say you got a McDonald's restaurant there, if the parking lot's filled, that somebody can park, you know, in the shopping center too, which wouldn't be the case if there wasn't a cross easement, correct?
Right. So those are the types of things that will hopefully show up in the title search that, you know, are critical to the operation of your single tenant there, that, you know, are not really anything that's of typically of any import in a multifamily situation where it's probably self-parked all right on the property, either on the lot or if you've got a garage there. So,
and I just want to say the other term that's used for that is reciprocal easement agreements, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those
REAs.
those run with the title, so that you want to make sure that those are in the title, correct, Dave?
That's correct. Yep.
So that's why Dave is always checking the title first to see what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And typically I think when you structure the deal, you're going to get, as part of your document delivery from the seller, X number of days after you enter into the contract, it's probably in a data room or something, you'll get a copy of their most recent title. You're going to, of course, want to do your own search too to verify what's in there. But you should have a pretty good handle on that right out of the gate if there's any issues there.
Is there anything else that comes up in commercial that typically doesn't come up in like a multifamily or a single family home?
I guess the other thing that is very important from a financing standpoint, if you're getting financing in connection with your acquisition, is that your lender is going to insist upon a subordination, non-disturbance, and attornment agreement from the tenant or any tenants that are part of the transaction. Let me clarify that a little bit. Two things that a lender is going to be looking for from the tenants. One is an SNDA, a subordination, non-disturbance, and attornment agreement. That would be from anybody who has a recorded notice of lease on the land records, or whose lease is not automatically subordinated by the terms of the lease. So, and just sort of clarifying what that is, an SNDA says that the lease is subordinate to the mortgage, that in the event of a foreclosure, the tenant will attorn to or recognize the foreclosing bank as their new landlord under the terms of the lease, and that the lender will not disturb the tenancy rights of the tenant. So it kind of cuts both ways.
So what you're basically saying is the lessee or the tenant wants to make sure that if the landlord, don't pay the mortgage, that they don't lose their lease. And at the same time, the lender wants to make sure that the tenant recognizes them as the lender, so that if there is a foreclosure filed, then it's like, you guys don't stop paying rent to them, you pay rent to us, and this is all legal.
Correct. Yep. And the lender is going to be looking for that, and they are going to have their own form SNDA that they love to use. A lot of the national tenants are going to have their own form attached to the lease that they're going to want to use. Usually in that battle, the tenant's going to win if it's a national, and they say, no, lender, you guys negotiate off of this. So that all is going to take time, and you got to kind of build that in when you're negotiating the PSA. The other thing is
I just want to stop you right there, because it's an important thing that I don't think most people realize. So number one, it's going to take time. Number two, if it's a large tenant, let's say Walgreens or something like that, if they've got 16,000 stores, they don't want to have to reinvent the wheel all the time. So they don't want let's say some little local bank that has like 4 branches to say, well, we need you guys to do this. Walgreens is going to kind of say, it's much easier to use our thing, and if you don't agree to use our thing, we're not going to agree to the SNDA, and then the deal doesn't go through. So, that takes time, because you got to find the person at Walgreens to do that, and you got to find the right person at the bank to get it all done. And Dave is the guy that usually ends up, kind of trying to mediate the two of them.
Yeah. Yes. And then the other thing that the lender is going to require, which is also for the investor's benefit, is the tenant Estoppel certificate. And, is, a sort of a snapshot of the lease at the time. What is the, current expiration date? How much of a security deposit is out there? Have there been any rents paid more than 30 days in advance? Is there any outstanding work that the landlord has not performed that a lender could then have to step into the shoes of and have an obligation to, build out a space or something like that?
I just need to stop you because this is a super huge thing. Sometimes I've seen people where they didn't get an Estoppel certificate because it wasn't quite as sophisticated as a transaction. And then it turns out that the tenant wasn't paying rent, or that the landlord said that there was a tenant in there, but it was his brother-in-law, or, certain things like that. So what is Dave said exactly, it's a snapshot, and the tenant says, yes, I'm paying this amount of rent per month. My lease ends at this time. And also you do find some surprises, because every once in a while it's like, well, the landlord said they were going to give me a new HVAC. And I haven't gotten my new HVAC. So if you don't have that in the Estoppel and you don't go back to the landlord, and sometimes they'll produce, sometimes they'll just say that, sometimes they'll produce like evidence of that.
Right.
And if they do produce evidence of that, you as the buyer could end up having to spend $16,000 on a new HVAC system, because you are legally obligated to, comply with all the terms of that lease or any side agreements.
Yep, that's absolutely right. And so it is for the protection of both the buyer and the bank that the tenants executed tenant estoppel. Now, if you're buying a large shopping center, you don't want to jam up the entire deal because your 1,000 square foot froyo operator hasn't gotten you tenant estoppel, right? So you want to build in some flexibility when you're talking to your lender about, okay, we'll deliver these 6 anchors plus 80% of the other non-anchor tenants will at least get their tenant estoppels. And then you, the buyer, have to take the educated, all right, it's worth it for us to, roll the dice on the froyo guy who hasn't gotten us the estoppel back.
So the really nice thing about single-tenant triple-net leases is you've only got one tenant that you have to worry about. And it's typically a larger tenant that has a number of stores, and to use a colloquialism, they know the drill. So it's not going to come as a surprise. As Dave brought up, the local froyo guy, or if you're buying a single-tenant triple-net lease, with a local, gyro shop or something, you come to them and say you need to sign this. They might say, well, I'm not going to do this. So, but the national tenants are all familiar with this. It's a little bit more, as Dave said, a wrestling match to get, the type of stuff so that the lender's comfortable in the SNDA. But at the end of the day, this stuff protects you, and the bank is not going to lend you money unless you get this done.
Correct. And getting back to Adam's original question, I think, this is nothing you need to worry about in a multifamily situation, right? You're not going to be looking for really any estoppels from, if you're buying a 100-unit apartment building, you're certifying to a rent roll, and that's about it.
Or you're going to hire somebody to do a lease audit of, the leases to make sure that somebody's doing it, which you don't have to do in this case, because the estoppel kind of says, yes, we are paying this, and yes, the lease runs through this.
Correct. Yep.
Speaking of national tenants, are you able to kind of share any stories of maybe some groups that you've been able to work with? From a branding perspective, who have you been able to get to know on that side of things?
Well, as I'm still negotiating leases with them, I don't want to do that, but I can tell you that there are tenants out there, that national tenants that will, when you request one of these documents, will say our normal turnaround is X days, maybe 45 or 60. For an additional $5,000 or something, you will be in the expedited pool and get it as soon as 21 days to 30 days or something like that. So at that point, it's like, all right, what are my deadlines? Is my commitment running out? Am I subject to the rate going up? Is it worth it for me to pay this extra $5 to get this thing expedited?
And I do want to circle back on, so Dave does, and I understand this because, we don't want to tell stories, on a podcast where,
Right.
we could sit around at a bar and say, this is what happened. But the key thing about using an attorney like Dave or somebody as experienced as Dave is Dave has relationships with these national tenants. So he has done this before. So it's not like somebody going out and having to hunt down. He's still going to have to hunt down because the people change all the time, but he knows what department to go to. He knows, who's there. In a lot of cases, what's even great, since he's negotiated leases with the general counsel on a lot of these national tenants, when you're buying a property, he can just kind of say, hey, who would the person be to talk to get this, estoppel, and how do I get this in line? So that's what I'm saying. Dave brings that type of value in anybody that's been doing this for a long time versus, well, I've been doing, mobile home parks, and now I'm going to just kind of try my hand in, doing a legal thing with this. I recommend, and we found it actually way more cost effective to go with the people that know what they're doing in their specific, especially attorneys in their specific, area of expertise. I will say, and, I don't want to talk out of school, but Dave on the buyer side and I think the seller side has also represented, some of the largest parking corporations in the country, and he's done things. He's represented medical groups and in medical buildings. So he's done, just give us an idea of some of the other commercial real estate type of stuff you do.
Well, increasingly, we're seeing a lot in the industrial space. Distribution and is obviously a hot market right now. And yes, medical office use, actually more there on the tenant side than on the landlord side, which is a little bit unusual, and probably 80-20 landlord tenant. After 30 years, you've seen a lot. So I think the other thing that having an experienced attorney involved is that they're, particularly if the property is located where they're located, that attorney, he or she has a lot of other connections for finding a good, licensed environmental professional to do a phase one, or, a good property inspector or appraiser to recommend, so the connections to the other professionals that you're going to need to close on this transaction, I think that you can bring some value there too.
Right. And I do want to bifurcate the purchase and sale agreement, the PSA, versus the leasing, because Dave does leasing work all over the country because these are national tenants. So it's a different type of legal practice. And then, for the most of your, attorney stuff is a little bit more localized. You're out in the New England area, so it's a little more localized to New England. This guy has extensive contacts all over New England. But he does do stuff for us nationwide.
Yeah.
What are, you mentioned industrial, and I think it, along with triple net leases, as far as having a lot of resources for information out there, is not a whole lot. What are maybe like some mistakes you're seeing take place in the industrial space right now that could help someone who's thinking about doing a deal in that sector?
It's interesting. I was just having a discussion with a client who is building onto his existing industrial space and adding another like 70,000 square feet to it. And he doesn't need a lot of loading docks and delivery doors for his use. But in talking with others, he's adding all of these additional doors that he's never going to use because he wants to be able to sell it. And when he does go, when he's getting up there, when he's retiring, he wants to have this well positioned for the second generation use. And so you got to kind of think about those things, like either not only when you're developing, but when you're buying. It may necessarily suit your needs, but it may not be something that can be easily marketed down the road. Height of ceilings is another thing. Are there beams interrupting, the sort of, if you're large parts manufacturing, is it broken up into too many different rooms for that type of use? So those are the types of things that, if you have a good experienced broker too, they're going to be able to kind of lead you in the right direction on those.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback onto that with the retail, which I know a little bit better. The CVS, the Walgreens, and all the rest of that stuff. If you're buying one of them and they don't have a drive-through, you more than likely won't have them renewed. But the other thing that Dave would bring to the party is he would force me to go through and look at the zoning and see if that drive-through is just a conditional use permit or if it's something that runs with the land. The drive-through that runs with the land makes the property way more valuable than the conditional use permit. So there's certain towns that it's insanely hard to get a drive-through because they think drive-throughs generate extra traffic. So those are just some of the pitfalls that, an attorney that has the experience of Dave, has killed a few deals for me, but in retrospect, it was way better to, not go through with it than to, be stuck with something that's going to be, unusable if and when that tenant leaves.
Are drive-throughs becoming more popular now, though?
Drive-through is 100% more popular since COVID. You take a look at Shake Shack was, just walk up. Chipotle was just walk up. They all have, they're not doing new stores. Starbucks won't do a new store. They were all going to, Starbucks was going to drive-throughs, but now they will not do a new store because if they don't have a drive-through during COVID, their stores were closed down. So drive-through is a very important thing in the single-tenant triple-net. And even tenants like Apple, all their new stores are going to be outside of malls. They're going to be out, freestanding and things like that. So drive-through is just going to be even more important. And you can see the evolution of retail because even like grocery stores that we have, they all want pickup lanes. And there's this thing called BOPUS, which is buy online, pick up at store. So that's, and that was happening even before COVID because it was driven by, people buying online. So, and if you've got a drive-through, you can't duplicate that. And I even see it, in, people that I know from Europe and other countries. It's like, everybody's deciding, it's like, oh, now I'm driving and why not eat in my car?
It's definitely more common now. So as far as your recommendations for, resources and becoming more educated in triple net leases, or maybe even just kind of what helped you become more educated in real estate in general, David. I mentioned this to you before the show, but I'd like to joke and say I'm of the rich dad, poor dad generation. So I want to know what you guys were getting into to become smarter in the real estate
I don't
space.
think Dave knows who Robert Kiyosaki is. Do you, Dave?
No, yeah, I do, Michael. I do.
Because I didn't know who he was until a few years ago. So.
Yeah. Any resources, any recommendations, Dave?
Well, I was fortunate when I first started out. I worked for a gentleman who's now long retired, but he was sort of the dean of the Hartford leasing community, and it was an invaluable 4 or 5 years, however long I was there. And then just
Can we
dealing
say
with
his
people
name?
like Michael. Yeah, sure, Bob Birnbaum. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he was a great mentor. and then
most of the time.
and then just interacting with people like Michael who give you another perspective on it. They really do. They see it from the business side, and you see what's important to them, and it kind of adjusts your focus a bit too. You may not have been concerned about certain provisions in a lease until you talk to somebody like Michael, and you then realize, oh wow, this is of critical importance. You're not as necessarily focused on what are the legal default rights or something like that, because you want to know that if they're doing everything that they are required to do under the lease, am I still getting the benefit of my bargain here? If they've got a very liberal assignment clause and they assign this to some subsidiary of what we thought we had this great corporate tenant credit, and now they assign it to some real estate holding company we no longer have,
or a cannabis operation that's illegal, until you lose your loan with your bank,
right.
So,
right,
which could potentially happen.
So it's been helpful working with experienced people like Michael to kind of as I said, redirect my focus to different areas of the lease.
I knew that I had made it when Dave called me up and asked for advice on a few different leases. So I wasn't able to charge him for it, but it gave me professional satisfaction that
That's right.
What do you think we should do here? And you can call anytime, Dave. So
all right, very good.
Well, all right. So moving forward, 2021 has been, I'd say, a little bit more of an optimistic year than the previous. What are, what's your forecast for the future of the triple net space, as far as, Michael used the word evolution of retail. What are you seeing happening over the next, say, 3 years?
Well, I hope I've done my last temporary rent concession agreement as related to COVID. It was a challenging 2020 for, I think, everybody on both sides, landlord and tenant. But everybody seems, pretty bullish right now. Things are opening up where I am. There's, optimism, particularly among the food industry tenants who just got hammered in 2020. And yeah, I think Michael's right. I think we are going to see an evolution of increasing importance on drive-throughs, parcel pickup areas. That sort of going forward, I think that they're going to be baked into the leases going forward at the start. But right now they're just going to see if they can reconfigure the space to make it work where they are now, in light of what we've experienced over the last year.
And my question is, if somebody's considering doing a 1031 exchange, and typically people are selling multifamily because they get tired of, all the management intensivity, or, they're coming out of something else. What should they contact you first and kind of talk to you about, mapping out a strategy? Would that be a good thing? Or how do you think that should happen? Because I know you've got a good relationship with a 1031 facilitator, John Hamrick, that we're going to bring on in a few weeks. But
yeah, I mean, typically I think the conversation starts with your accountant. They're going to tell you what the tax hit is going to be. The only thing I caution a party in when they come to me and is may have not identified a property, but thinking they're going to do a 1031 is don't chase the deal just to save on the taxes. Because if the deal doesn't make sense, you don't pull the trigger on that replacement 1031 property just so you can save on the capital gains hit. But I think you're right. It is going to be an increasingly used vehicle if the rates go up.
Right, and also if it survives.
Yes,
because that was on the chopping block too. So,
yeah,
absolutely. Okay. Well, Adam, do you have any, final questions that?
I think, I might as well ask one more question, and then we'll do final comments as well. David, if you were 30 again, and looking at, let's see, let me give an example. Well, if you were working with the world's first single-tenant triple-net lease security token at age 30, what do you think you'd be most focused on?
Well, I would need somebody to really educate me on the token aspect of it. But I will tell you this: I have the only time I dabbled in investing myself was with some multifamily, and if you are working another job, it's impossible. You got it. It's too time intensive, and my analysis after about a year and a half was, I got to get out at whatever cost. So, the triple net investment is a great entry point for someone who is not ready to perhaps leap in full time. This is what I'm doing now. Okay. That's
your recommendation is for busy professionals, doctors, attorneys, and people like that that work long hours and they are looking for passive investments. Is go with more of a triple net lease, and I would recommend not going with a shopping center. And I can tell you this from my experience of years with shopping centers. I love them. I'm still bullish on them. But if you're looking to have something truly passive and mailbox money, I would recommend the single-tenant triple-net lease, or else passively investing with somebody else that absolutely knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And if you're not handy,
don't want to shovel snow.
And don't have the patience to deal with the tenants, the residential tenants, do not get involved in that.
Nice. All right. Well, final comments. We'll start with Michael and David, and go ahead and close it out.
Well, Dave, I want to sincerely thank you for coming on. Dave has not only been a trusted advisor, but he's also grown into a friend, and I love the fact that we've known each other for so long, and we go out to dinner, and I'm gonna have to make it out there very soon, Dave. So, and get back to going out to dinner again and everything else. So I want to thank you, Dave, for coming on and all the years of excellent advice that you've given us.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's great to hear. I've really valued our friendship, and look forward to seeing you again when we're up and traveling a bit more. And I've enjoyed working with you, and certainly learned a lot from you over the years. So thank you for that.
And you're going to be learning much more with blockchain and the new financial system. So
that's right. We'll have to invite
your seatbelt on.
Coming meetup. Yeah. We almost forgot contact. Dave, what's the best way for anyone tuned in to follow up and get in touch with you?
Yeah. What's your website, Dave?
Yeah, it's JWRB.com.
So it's JWRB.com, which stands for Jacobs, Walker, Rice, and Beige. No, Barry.
Good memory, Michael.
So Jacobs, Walker, Rice, and Barry law firm. You're actually in a suburb of Hartford. What's the name of it again?
Manchester.
Yeah. So Manchester, Connecticut, and I highly recommend them. So if you're looking for somebody that knows what they're doing, especially if you've got any type of lease issue, but also on contracts or anything like that. But if you're, got a difficult lease issue with a national tenant, talk to Dave.
Great. Thank you.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for another fantastic episode of Nothing But Net, the podcast for commercial triple net real estate investing. We were with David Berry today talking about the legal side of buying and leasing triple net assets. So, David, thank you once again for joining us. Michael, thanks for finding a great guest as always. And we will see you all and see you all and be with you in the next episode. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for joining us here on Nothing But Net, the podcast for triple net commercial real estate investing. If you enjoyed what you heard today, one last friendly reminder to like, share, subscribe, or leave a review for us. It really helps a ton with the show's visibility. For the Nothing But Net team, I'm Adam Carswell. Take care.
Nothing but net.
The Nothing But Net podcast is not intended to provide legal, tax counsel, or accounting advice. Adam Carswell, Michael Flight, Concordia Realty Corporation, Liberty Real Estate Fund LLC, and their affiliates do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice or the worthiness and promotion of any particular investment. This material has been prepared for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult your own tax, legal, and accounting advisors before engaging in any transaction or undertaking. We highly encourage individuals and investors to seek the counsel of a qualified attorney as well as seek the counsel of a tax professional or certified public accountant to determine if there are any potential tax liabilities or consequences as a result of anything contained herein. All listeners of this podcast or video should understand that there are no guarantees of any success, outcome, or profitability of any transaction or undertaking expressed or implied and will not be liable for any financial or other losses or damages incurred as a result of any undertaking. Go to nothingbutnet.us for a complete set of disclosures. Thank you.